Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of JA's Recipe for Success. I'm Lori Salarulo, and I'm your host, and I have the honor of being the CEO of Junior Achievement of South Florida. You know, we started this show so that we could hear about the stories and the journeys of leaders and entrepreneurs, community advocates, and I have met so many interesting people and gotten to know people that I already knew. So much better and so much deeper. And when you hear someone's story, I think there's a couple of things. One, again, it is so interesting to learn about them because now when you see them, right, you feel like you really do know them better. And then the second part is, for me, is I'm always inspired and motivated by their stories. And please excuse my froggy throat this morning. I think I might be coming down with a little sore throat, but not COVID, as we just talked about with Seth. This month we have been celebrating Financial Literacy Month, and that is one of JA's three core pillars. And if you're following what's happening at the school board, and yes, there is a lot happening at the school board, but one of the things they talked about on Tuesday was whether to make financial literacy a mandated a mandated course for graduation. In my opinion, as a parent, I think it's just as important as math and reading and science. So I hope that the school board members have the courage and the vision to make that something that our children must have in order to graduate and in order to be successful in life. So with that, I want to introduce this morning's guest. It's someone that I've known in the community kind of from afar. We always said hi and knew each other, but I am so excited to hear his story this morning. And so please help me welcome Seth Wise, who's the Executive Vice President of BBX Capital. He also serves on the board of directors of the company, and he's also the president of BBX Capital Real Estate. And if that weren't enough, he's also the co-CEO of the Altman Companies, which over the last, 45 years has built over 26,000 rental apartments. And so by the way, one last thing that he has in his spare time, he's also on the board of directors of Bluegreen Vacations. And so I definitely want to hear about how he has time for all of this and how he does it so well. So please help me welcome Seth Wise. Good morning. Hold on. I got to get you in. There you are. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi,
How
Lori.
are you?
I'm good. Nice to be with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. I talked about all those things. How do you find the time to do all of that?
Sleep is optional. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a big believer in a good 7 hours. You know what? It's team. I get to have all those fancy titles, but the reality is I represent an amazing group of people that do really the heavy lifting. So I'm picking the right team and letting them do their dance is the way it happens, at least in my view.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But you're absolutely right. I could not agree with you more. We could have the greatest vision or product or service in the world, and if we don't have the people who can execute right and make that happen, then we're never going to be successful. So we'll talk more about that. But first, for me, I always love hearing people's story, right? We all have a story. We all have a journey that we're on. And I always say to friends of mine, and it became kind of our little mantra was, life is all about the journey and enjoy the moment that you're in. But sometimes it's fun to look back and see, right, where you came from, where you're going and the future. And so I want to hear a little bit about your story and how did you get to where you are today?
How much time do you have? No, just kidding.
We'll have to bring you back for the second version.
Right. I'd love to. So I grew up in DC, and actually in Maryland, just outside DC, and I'm a product of a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was 12. And it was one of those messy divorces where dad leaves no money behind, and that sends the family into my brother, and I have a younger brother, and then of course my mom sent us into a tailspin financially, and literally to the point of food stamps and handouts. And it was at that I was old enough to know that was a scary time, and I remember my mom being under just tremendous stress. And I don't think there was a moment where I said, I'm going to do everything I can to sort of claw out of this. Maybe it was subconscious. Maybe there was a moment, I just don't remember it, but I just worked and worked and worked and worked. I sold newspapers door to door when I was 12, and I gave the money to my mother. And when I got to high school, I got a job in a retail store, and I helped. And it's just, it was, you talk about grit before the show started. I mean, I was never afraid to work. And I would say that I'm not the brightest bulb in the lamp. I was not a terrific student. I wasn't destined to go to Harvard or Yale or anything. I went to University of Florida. I was very lucky to get in. But I feel like hard work made up for some of those deficiencies and helped me just continue to claw out of what was a very tough situation. And it was a lot of, I would say, ingenuity and a lot of faith. I believed that I was not stuck. I believed that I could, if I worked hard, that I could figure out a way to get some amount of financial security and not risk going backwards. And so I just had this feeling, and as I got older, it became very deliberate. No one's going to outwork me. And when I got an opportunity, I was in the office, as I graduated college and got a job, I was in the office before anybody else. I would leave and go exercise, and then I would come back and I'd work until 11, 12 o'clock at night. And it was just, and one of the things I made a decision on is I was going to be I say the guy, but the person. I was going to be the person on the team that if the boss asked them to do something, they could take it to the bank. They would never have to ask twice. And that I would do it with such gusto that they would get the work back and go, wow. And I try to go beyond what they asked for and anticipate what they might need next. And it was just sort of relentless. But I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to working hard and never giving up.
Yeah.
Believe me, there were, over the course of my career, there were a lot of scary times and setbacks. And, we went through the great financial crisis, back in 2008. That was a very scary time.
Yeah.
And the key to getting through that was just work, and never giving up, and always believing that if we just keep after it, there'll be a rainbow at the other side with a pot of gold.
Yeah.
And,
I think you're right. It's interesting. I've been through one of those divorces as an adult. I was fortunate not to go through that as a child, but I do know that it affects how it affects children, right? From seeing that in my own family. And I think sometimes at first, when we go through any tragedy, right? Sometimes work becomes an escape.
right.
I know for me, it did when I lost my dad very early on. And for me, work became that escape, right? But then what happens is, as you said, it kind of becomes, okay, wait, this hard work is going to get me somewhere else, right? Besides just the escape of it. So however it starts out, it's a good thing. And there's two ways that situations like that go, right? A kid could end up going down the wrong path, or they could, like you, decide, no, I'm going to do something different, right? I'm going to make it. And that's the grit that we talked about before the show. You mentioned team at the very onset of this. And I know I can say that in my career as a manager, as a director, as a leader, as a CEO, I have to say, I think the most challenging thing, because you can work really hard, right? You can have the vision, but building that culture and that mindset in a team, to me, has been one of the most challenging things, because you're dealing with so many personalities. Talk a little bit about that. And when I came up the ladder, people didn't have a seat at the table. It was very different than it is today, right? So leadership has changed so much. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I find all that fascinating.
Yeah, I've been blessed, and I think this is another thing that I give a lot of credit to. The success that I've had is having great mentors, and those mentors, one being my grandfather, who sadly isn't with us anymore, and then Alan Levan, who is my partner today, and Jack Abdo, who's one of my other partners today. All three of those individuals in different ways have had tremendous influence on me. And I would say the hard work, the perseverance, but also a humility that all three have had, and all three very successful in their own right, different levels. My grandfather was a very modest success, but for his generation, he was the first person to go to college and he worked hard. But there's humility is sort of a common theme. And I think as it relates to your question about leading a team, I try very hard, although I'm sort of a public face, I am not the tip of the spear. The hand-to-hand combat today in my world is happening with others. And for me, and this is not just a soundbite, I try to live this, the credit goes to the team. And I try to give lots of credit publicly amongst our teams. When somebody does something really well, it's public credit, public celebration. If there's somebody who needs some constructive criticism, I do that privately. So my goal is to build up the team so that they have the confidence to get out there every day and follow the direction that we've as a management team set. And so I just think leadership and having a team feel good about being on the team and following your lead, because at the end of the day, it's our job as the leaders to set the direction. Are you humble enough to really know where the work is being done, and humble enough to take feedback from the team and not be blind to whatever vision you created or direction that you set? You've got to be able to pivot.
Oh, yeah. Haven't we learned that in the last year?
Yeah, right.
And I think, you talk about taking feedback from the team, and it's really interesting because, I mean, that's all about self-awareness, right? And knowing that we, even as leaders, well, first of all, I always tell my team, you're all leaders in this organization. The title has nothing to do with it, right? But I often find that the title can be intimidating to people. Yeah. Right. And so they sometimes won't give us or don't give us the feedback that I know I really want, right? Because I want to get better and I want to grow as a leader. So encouraging them to do that and being open to that. And when they do it, right, thanking them and not reacting in a negative way.
And being authentic about it, not just, I read this in a management book, I'm supposed to get feedback from the team. People can see through that. Oh, yeah. And if it's really authentic and you really want to know, I think, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, people start to open up and share because they really want to tell you. They really want to give their opinion if they think you're really interested.
Right. And if they think you'll do something about it, right? How often did you say, well, I'm not going to bother telling them because they're not going to change anything, right? Nothing's going to change.
Exactly.
So I agree. But you mentioned that word that I think we have all come to despise over the last 13, 14 months, and that's pivoting, right? And we have all had to do that in some way, shape, or form. And you and I talked very briefly yesterday about the pandemic, and you mentioned earlier the recession of 2008. I want people to know a little more about the business, and what was your anticipation when this all first started at the pandemic? How did you have to pivot, right, to get through this?
Yeah. I have to say, again, like you said, we talked about this yesterday, March and April, very scary. I mean, we literally met day after day after day on Zoom, planning for how are we going to survive what we thought was going to be the worst economic crisis that any of us had seen in our lifetime. And my partners are in their 70s. They've seen a lot, right? And we all thought this was going to be worse than anything we had ever seen. And so we were literally creating contingency plan waves. If this happens, what are we going to do with this? And meanwhile, we're in the apartment business, as you said, we're in the timeshare business, we're in the candy retailing business. So we're having to meet with our CEOs in these different businesses and say, okay, what's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? How are we going to get through this? And it was absolutely terrifying. But I would say that one of the other things that I learned early on and again, this comes from having great mentors who exhibit it, is, I don't want to say grace under pressure, but a don't panic. Be deliberate, don't be rash, have a plan, have 5 plans, have contingency plans for all different, but just don't panic and be deliberate. And I think that, and the other thing that as things didn't deteriorate the way we thought they might, we kind of pivoted from, well, wait a minute, this may not be as bad as we thought. And thank God that we're in a position where we've got capital. Maybe we ought to pivot to opportunity. And we went from in March and April and May, when it was like, how are we going to survive? As we saw our businesses were going to be okay, we started to make that pivot, and we said, all right, never waste a good crisis. And that became the mantra. We went back to our teams and we said, okay, this isn't going to be as bad. And some of the businesses were hurt more than others. Obviously, the retail business was hit harder than the apartment business, which really had a 2-minute blip and then just was better than even pre-pandemic, which is just a miracle.
Yeah.
But we basically went back to our teams and we said, okay, we're blessed. We've got capital. We're financially strong, because we had been preparing for a recession. We thought, oh, this last expansion had gone on so long, there's got to be one coming, because there always is. Let's get ready to be opportunistic. And we didn't see a pandemic coming, but we had capital, and we said, all right, now let's go out and be opportunistic. And all the teams started focusing on, where can we deploy capital and buy another business or do something that was opportunistic. And that proved to be wonderfully successful. Almost all the businesses seized new opportunities during the pandemic that we would not have had if not for the pandemic. And that was a little bit of having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake before the pandemic. Grow, but don't grow so the wheels come off and it's all on red. Grow in a way that allows you to have money kind of in the back pocket. And to some extent, I'm a product of where I came from. I don't ever want to be caught flat-footed again. And so I want to grow, but we're about singles and doubles, not try to hit home runs. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we go broke. Not interested.
Right.
Singles and doubles, and play the long game.
I love that. So I mean, risk, but strategic,
calculated risk,
intentional, calculated risk. Exactly. So your companies range across so many industries, right? And real estate, or I should say construction, home improvement, those companies, right, have done very, very well during that time. The timeshare, right, vacation business took a real bad hit at the beginning, but now they're doing better, right, than ever.
Phenomenal.
At least that's my understanding from talking to people.
Starting to come. Yeah, absolutely.
Starting to come back. And then, but retail, right? The candy, Hoffman's, It's Sugar. Has there been a difference there? Has that been a slower comeback?
Yeah,
and
as you
retail look like, right? You just opened, I think you had just opened this amazingly enormous candy, like the biggest candy store in the world.
Department store.
Right up in New Jersey. I think somewhere. I remember Jarrett being on the show and telling me about it.
Yeah.
And then pandemic hits, right? So what's the future of the retail area?
So look, retail, all that you said, by the way, is right. Retail is going to change. It was already changing. The Amazon effect, so to speak, it was chipping away at retail as we knew it. And I think, and look, nobody knows for sure, but I think, and we're seeing it now. I mean, you read about it in the newspaper, retail is back. People are going to the malls and they're spending and they're just dying to get out. And I think the key word is to experience. Yes. And I think that's where retail is headed. Going to a sort of an old, tired mall and trolling around to tired retailers with no energy, that's probably finished. But going to a mall like the American Dream Mall in New Jersey, where there's a ski slope in the mall and there's a water park and there's a roller coaster and a 25,000 square foot candy department store, and it's just at every turn it's experiential and wow. I think that has tremendous legs because people want to ultimately we're social beings, right? And this, I think, if anything, the pandemic has shown us that we got to be around people. Zoom is not the same. I can't wait till I can see you in person.
Oh, I would much rather be in our kitchen at JA World than in my kitchen.
Right. So, and I think that's universal. And so, to varying degrees, some people are more social than others, but I think we all want to be out and experience things and be around other people. And so, I think retail is going to change, continue to change. It's not going to go away. It'll just be different. And I think our candy businesses are actually perfectly positioned to play a role in that because they are experiential. Who doesn't walk by a candy store and see the colors and it brings out the kid in you, right? I mean, or a Hoffman's chocolate, and you walk by and you smell that chocolate, and it's like whatever you're doing, you stop dead in your tracks and you're like hypnotized. So
listen, no, I have no willpower when I walk past an It's Sugar or Hoffman's. I'm gonna confess right here.
We count on that,
I go straight to the sweetest fish, the Raisinets, and the chocolate covered almonds. I mean,
I'm a gummy bear guy, so
right. Yeah. And I love them, but I think you're right. And when you talk about experiential experiences, we're in the world of education, right? Workforce development.
It's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, economic empowerment. We cannot teach our kids the same way we have taught them in the past, right? With the internet at their fingertips and exciting things that they can have at any moment, we cannot stand in front of a classroom. It has to be experiential. And that's where an organization like JA can bring that.
Absolutely.
And complement, right, what the school district is doing. But and so I'm really glad to hear that about retail because I love going out to the mall, right? But you're right, it was boring for a while. And so I think we need one of those American Dream malls here in Broward. So
there's one coming in Miami.
I heard that. I think I heard that. Yeah. But yeah, Miami, and I don't want to drive down there. We need one up here too. But the other thing that you talked about was, we talked about people and teams and all of that. One of the things that I hear consistently across the board is the workforce challenge, right? Business is doing great. Construction is doing great, right? Everybody's investing in building and home improvement and other improvements, but people, and even especially in the retail piece, people cannot find workers, right? And so they're trying to get creative. I just did an article last week in the Sun Sentinel 100 about, engaging with non-traditional, right, populations to fill the workforce gap. Are you experiencing that in your businesses, and what are some of the things you're doing?
Yeah, it's a major problem really across all the businesses. In the timeshare business, challenges getting people to work in the hotels, cleaning rooms or whatever, the needs are. In the retail stores, it's hard to get people to want to come in and work the floor in a retail store. There's no silver bullet for that. I think, a lot of the support from the stimulus packages have, in a way, it was a blunt tool. We had to get out there and just help. And, there's negatives that come along with that because it wasn't sharp shooting. And so you have people out there that, can basically not go to work and do almost as well as they would if they were working, and they're making that choice. I think once that wears off, I think we'll see an improvement in that. But it's even broader than that. I mean, I think just having the skills in some of these, for example, in construction, there's a significant shortage of skilled labor.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful career. I mean, being a plumber or an electrician, I mean, you could build a skill set and then build a business around that.
Exactly.
And I think there's just tremendous opportunities for people that are willing to work hard. I can't think, honestly, in my career of a better time than now to get out there and try to grab the brass ring, because it's hard, even when you can hire people, to be frank, it's hard to find people that have the grit and the drive to really want to make it happen. So if somebody has that desire to get out and be the person, be the one that someone can count on, show up early, work late. This idea that you don't have to do that, I think is sort of debunked. I think you got to get out and work hard. There's no way to phone that in. But if you do it in today's world, companies recognize that because it's not universal. It's hard to find people that are willing to do that. And I believe that people who work like that will move up ranks wherever they go very quickly because they'll stand out.
Yep,
I think it's a wonderful opportunity today.
There's an opportunity to stand out today. I absolutely agree with you. And that's what we talk with our, especially our high schoolers. How are you going to stand out from the rest? Right. Whenever I get to speak with them, I always talk about stepping up and showing up. Right. How are you going to show up? And so I absolutely agree that all of that, we also talked yesterday a little bit about, and I've been reading more about this in the last couple of weeks, the supply chain issue.
Yeah.
So, how is that affecting all of the businesses? Like I read something about that coconut, there's a shortage of coconut. Well, what are we going to do? I mean, almond joys, coconut patties, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I mean, you joke about it, it's a real issue. I mean, and it's everything. Look, in construction, lumber costs have gone up 3x in the last year and a half, if you could even get it. And this is just universal, and it's almost like a perfect storm. The pandemic hit, and like we talked about, companies said, batten down the hatches, slow down the production line, stop the production line, whatever it was. This is going to be horrible. We better not keep putting money into inventory. So they stopped. Then, like we talked about, things didn't get as bad as we thought. They started to bring people back and get the factories going again. And then wham, breakouts of COVID in the factory, shut it down for 10 days, start it up, shut it down again. And so there's these fits and starts of production at the raw material level, at the input level, lumber, computer chips, coconut, and it's universal. And then on top of that, you have the Suez Canal problem, where that ship basically blocked the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
And I saw an image, a satellite image and you couldn't imagine the number of ships on both sides of the Suez Canal that were just sitting and anchoring, waiting to go through. That's another disruption. And when you have factories that now are running at full steam because they're trying to catch up from the production that they gave up to fill demand that's in some cases greater than it was before COVID, those disruptions ripple through everything. I mean, I went to buy a car recently. You can't get a car.
Well, they have a chip issue, right? The shortage.
Yes. So and all it takes is one thing. I mean, you can have a car with wheels and steering wheel and brakes but if it doesn't have that chip, it's not going anywhere. So it only takes. Look, how can you have coconut patties without coconut?
Right.
How can you have a house without lumber? So and it's a real issue, and so we're facing it everywhere, and it's not unique to us. It's every business has got this in one way or another, and we just have to kind of fight through it. It'll ultimately settle down. But it's a real problem.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And I worry, what's the effect going to be on the consumer, right? Because you have to pass on those costs at some point, right, to somewhere. So yeah, I don't think we're at the end of the disruption. Actually, I think we need to get used to living in a world of disruption with technology and all of the, transportation and the things that are happening. I think it's going to become a norm, right? To live in a world of disruptions. Some will be positive. I don't mean it in a negative way. Some will be positive disruption, right?
There's no question. And you have to kind of be comfortable with change.
Yeah.
Whether you're running a business or just living your life. I mean, there's always going to be change, and you have to be prepared.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on one last thing, because first of all, when I read your bio, the list of organizations that you have been involved with in the community is endless. So I didn't even try to list them all. And we do post your bio. So if anybody wants to see all of the organizations that you've been on, certainly they can see that. But I want to talk a little bit generically about that. You're obviously committed to the community. I know I can say firsthand, BBX Capital, Bluegreen, Hoffman's, all of those companies, right, in some way, shape, or form, together, separately, have supported junior achievement. And BBX, Bank Atlantic, great, the Levan family from the very onset of that, with Alan being an alumni. And so we're very grateful for that. And I've always looked at you all as a role model, right? In the community, of a corporate partner, someone who invests in the community. And, you know, you talk about the workforce coming. We've got to get these kids to know, right, that these jobs exist. And so that support is so necessary today, and investing in the future pipeline, I know, is critical, and you all have stepped up. Talk a little bit about that. Is that, you know, some companies do it, they do a little bit, but for you all, it seems like it's a very intentional strategy.
Yeah, I think it's very deliberate. It's not PR driven, and I know I speak for all of us, Alan Levan, Jarrett Levan, Jack Abdo, and myself, that it's in our DNA to want to give back. Why? Because we're immensely grateful for what the community has allowed us to achieve, and want to be part of making the community better and lifting other people up and giving other people opportunity. And for me personally, having come out of, you know, a tough situation, which, as you said, could have gone either way, and so much credit also goes to my dear mother, who passed this past year, for being, you know, strong and not falling apart during that tough time. I know that there are kids out there that have similar stories, and their story is just being written, but they're starting out the same way mine did. And I want to be part of the solution and give hope and opportunity to kids who have a bit more potential than I had. Just need a hand up and an opportunity and a place to engage, and whether it's JA or Jewish Family Services or United Way or whatever it is, ULI, the Urban Land Institute, giving the community and kids in particular the opportunity to claw out of whatever tough situation they're in. And the community was helpful to me as a kid. So how can I not give back? Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in that, and my partners are as well. So we always wish we could do more, both with time, because time is important. If we can bring some skill set to the table to move the ball forward, and of course money. So it's core, and it's very, dear to me. And I think all the time about the kids that are out there that can do the same thing or better than I did. They just need to have the help and know that it's possible.
I was just going to say, if they hear from someone like you, right, and sharing their story, which I think is amazing. Sometimes my daughter will say to me, well, why do you tell everyone, right, that you have a child with a disability, or you went through that bad divorce or whatever? He said, because it might help someone get through something they're going through.
Absolutely.
Right? And often it helps me in some way. They'll say, oh, I know somebody else who went through that. Maybe they can help you. And so I think when we can be authentic and share our stories without even realizing we're helping somebody else. So we're definitely going to get you to come tell your story. I've been writing, if you notice, my head kept going down. I've been writing all of your ingredients to success, which I ran out of room on the page. So I'm going to read some of those back, and then I'm going to ask you for your main ingredient to success. So some of the things that you mentioned, of course, were team, right? Making sure that you have the best team around you. You talked about sleep, and I kind of, equate that to taking care of yourself and others around you, right? Hard work. And I love this. I think it's The Rock that says, no one will outwork me, right? And so I love that attitude. That's that grit. You talked about ingenuity, right? Belief in yourself, that confidence that you developed over the years. And I think in my case, I don't think I was a confident child. Like, people look at me now and they think I probably was like this all my life. It was by working hard and achieving those successes that little by little, right? It's a catch-22. What comes first, the confidence or the success? But I think
By the way, I was the same way. I was terrible at sports. I mean, somebody would throw a football at me and it would hit me right in the head. I mean, I was, I mean, like left feet, left. I mean, I was, and so that from a confidence standpoint, that was tough as a kid, right? You know, you're the last one to get picked on the sports team. What does that feel like? Terrible, terrible.
Yeah, so, that can destroy a kid's confidence, being the last.
But at some point, finding that thing that you're good at, that it just comes naturally. That's when your confidence just takes off, because you're like, that's my secret strength,
right? Exactly. And we all have superpowers, right?
Everybody's got one. Yeah,
identify them and use them. Right, exactly. You talked about that belief in yourself. Your word, you talked about your word and how important it was that when you give it, right, that you live up to it. You talked about going beyond what someone has asked you to do, going beyond the expectations. Relentless. I remember a friend of mine actually here in the community told me one day, "You are relentless." And I was so upset, Seth, that someone would call me relentless. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, I need to, like, I need to change. And then I was like, wait a minute. It's not relentless. It's that passion that has made me successful, and, for what that means to me. So I'm all about being relentless, never giving up, having your mentors, right? Those people that guide you and help you grow, perseverance, humility, giving credit to the team, going back to the team conversation and empowering them, taking feedback from them, pivoting, of course, which we're getting used to now, authenticity. You talked about planning very indirectly, but very important both in life and in business, not to panic, right? And be deliberate and thoughtful and intentional, and looking for the opportunities in a time of crisis. Preparation. I talked about preparing, having the capital, and I will tell you that is actually what is getting JA through this time. We will have a revenue shortfall this year, probably a 15 to 20%. Nonprofits have taken a really big hit. But thank goodness over the last 5 years, the strategy was to build up, right, the reserve, so that in case of an emergency, because one was going to come at some point,
right,
we knew that we could survive and get through and not close the doors. So very important. You talked about finding your passion just now, right? What's important to you, what your superpowers are, responsible growth, but growth, that growth mindset, strategic risk, right? Calculated risk, being comfortable with change, standing out from the rest. And I love that one because I think, Mike, my fiance, always says, anybody can be average, right? But how do we stand out from the rest? Giving back to the community that helps you, and then gratitude, of course. And so those are some amazing ingredients, and it's no wonder that you have achieved the success that you have. And so I'm grateful that you were willing to share them with me. But now, the ultimate question, Seth Wise, what is your main ingredient to success?
Yeah, it was in there.
I figured.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of perseverance, never give up. And kind of along with that is play the long game. In today's world in particular, everybody wants the quick fix. Yeah. And we're conditioned to that with, instant delivery of this and download that, and you watch a movie. We used to have to go to Blockbuster to get a movie. Now you can have it in 2 seconds on your screen. Everything is fast. And I think that's in terms of achieving, it just takes time. There's no shortcut that's legal. And so you just gotta stick to it and persevere and work hard and just know that it will happen. And just push out the noise and the naysayers of, what are you doing that? You could go over here and make a quick buck. And no, I'm playing the long game. I'm going to build my reputation and my career and have the confidence. And I am, like I said before, I have more confidence today than ever that people coming into the workforce now that think that way, and all I have to do is follow 20% of what was on that list, and they play the long game and they keep after it and they don't give up and get diverted to the quick fix. They'll do terrific.
Yeah.
I have 100% confidence.
I think if there's any message that we can give to our children today, that's the message, right? They can be anything they want, but it doesn't always start here, right? They all want to be the CEO when they first come out. They want to own their own business. All of that is great. And that is the aspiration, right? But you've got to start somewhere. And like you said, learn along the way, keep going, work hard, and get recognized. And you will.
I always thought after I graduated, I always wanted to make money. I worked all through school and sold newspapers and sold carpets and all kinds of crazy stuff, which we'll talk about another day. But once I started to work, I said, this is great. I'm getting paid now to learn. Because I knew coming out of school, you don't know anything. You're still in school, building your knowledge toolbox, but then you're getting paid to do it. And so, again, I think it just comes to put your head down, work hard, long game, build your toolbox, and it will happen.
I agree. And I can't think of a better way to end this interview, but I can't wait for our kids to hear it. And when we're in person to get you in front of some of these students.
I would love to. Yeah.
Especially the entrepreneurial. We have about 600-700 entrepreneurial students who really need to hear this because they're going to build real businesses over the school year. And they need to hear about the perseverance, right, to keep going and get that business built. So I love it.
My pleasure.
Glad that we had the opportunity today and that I had the opportunity to learn from you. As I said, grateful and thank you for all that you're doing, and keep climbing, keep going.
It was fun. Thank you.
Yes,
really enjoyable.
We'll send you the link, and thanks everyone for watching, and wewe'll see you again next week on the next episode.
Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe.